A swirl of anxiety fluttered in my chest the instant I noticed it for the first time. The morning felt ordinary enough, a half-eaten bagel on my plate, coffee aroma lingering in the office air, hushed chatter from co-workers echoing across cubicles, but my focus zeroed in on the clock. We were mid-conversation by text, my wife and I, her laughter practically radiating off the screen. Then, abruptly, at 12:57 p.m. sharp, she went silent. It was as if she'd crossed an invisible threshold. I waited, phone in hand, the minutes stretching. At 1:15, still no reply. A sense of dread tightened in my stomach. By 1:30, that small flicker of unease grew into a flame. I knew she'd be finishing her lunch break soon, so maybe she was just busy. That's what I told myself. But in my gut, I felt the first stirring of an odd suspicion. Her lunch break texts always cut off at precisely the same time, day after day, like clockwork. And that time coincided with someone else's shift ending. To set the stage, I'm Marcus, 34 years old, living in a compact, softly lit apartment downtown with my wife, Lucy. She's the more outgoing one between us, works in the bustling environment of a mid-sized hospital as an administrative coordinator. For the past few years, I've teased her about being an unstoppable extrovert, always the first to plan a group outing or spontaneously join office socials. Meanwhile, I'm more of a homebody. We balanced each other. Our relationship had always felt simple, with days bridging from office talk to cozy nights on the couch. But in the last few months, Lucy's schedule changed. She told me she took on new administrative responsibilities, juggling rotating lunch breaks. That meant less predictability, but I adapted. We still made a point to text each other midday, a small tether of closeness. But around 6 weeks ago, I noticed an odd pattern. Our usual text banter would flow during her lunch break, usually sometime between noon and 1 p.m. Then, almost as if triggered by an alarm, she'd abruptly go silent. I might send a casual, "Hey, love, how's the rest of your day?" or "Looking forward to dinner," only to receive no answer until hours later, if at all. Initially, I figured she got pulled into urgent tasks, maybe a phone call from a supervisor. Yet it happened again and again, always right at that cusp, 12:57 p.m., or 12:58, sometimes 12:59. So consistent it was eerie. I tried not to read too much into it, but illusions have a way of seeding themselves. I found myself glancing at the clock each day, waiting to see if she'd vanish again at the same minute. And she would. Then, at 1 p.m., her co-worker Greg would clock out. He had a half-day shift, finishing right after lunch. The thought dawned on me in one stray conversation. Lucy casually mentioned, "Greg's done at 1 o'clock, he's so lucky." A jolt of recognition shot through me. Could it be that she was meeting Greg after his shift ended, or sending her last text right before they physically met up? It sounded paranoid, but the times lined up too neatly. My chest knotted with the possibility. So I began noticing other small details. She started wearing a new shade of lipstick, deeper and more striking, something she never used at home. "You look nice," I commented one morning, curiosity edging my tone. She shrugged it off, said she just felt like changing. Then she began pulling her hair back into a more styled updo, which she rarely did for a normal day. I teased her gently about dressing up for an important meeting, and she just gave a vague shrug. Subtle, trifling changes, but illusions can feed on trifles. One early morning, as Lucy was prepping for work, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I saw the name Greg R. flash across the screen. My stomach flipped. That was the co-worker with the half-day shift. She casually picked it up, read the message, typed a quick reply, then locked her phone. She noticed me watching and forced a quick smile. "Just some schedule stuff," she said, breezy. "He's coordinating some supply inventory." My smile was equally forced. The illusions thickened. By the next week, the tension in my chest every day leading up to 1 p.m. was nearly suffocating. I'd watch the clock from my own cubicle, half ignoring my tasks. Sure enough, at 12:57 p.m., our text chat would stop mid-laugh, mid-anecdote. Then I'd see "last seen at 12:57 p.m. on the messaging app. My heartbreak flared, a swirl of dread and anger, imagining her signing off to walk out of the hospital cafeteria, maybe meeting Greg in the hallway or heading to a hidden corner of the building. The illusions consumed me. But I had no proof, just circumstantial alignment. Yet illusions can be as piercing as any confirmed betrayal. I decided, in a swirl of desperation, to talk to Lucy directly about these lunch break vanishings. The next evening, we were in the kitchen, me chopping vegetables for dinner, her leaning against the counter. "Hey," I started, trying to keep my tone light, I've noticed your lunch break texts always cut off around the same time each day. Is something up at the hospital? She paused, a slight weariness crossing her face. I guess I just get pulled back to tasks, she said carefully. It's a busy time, people returning from lunch, so I can't keep texting. I tried to read her expression. Sure, that makes sense. But it's almost to the minute, Lucy. Like, 12:57, 12:58 every day. She shrugged, looking uneasy. Well, we're on a tight schedule, you know. The new administrator is big on punctuality. She forced a little laugh. I'm not lying or anything, if that's what you're implying. I sighed. I'm not accusing you, just, it's odd, that's all. I miss hearing from you after 1 p.m. She reached over, squeezed my arm. I promise, it's nothing shady, she murmured, though her eyes flicked away. Work's just intense. I'll try to be more flexible. Then she changed the subject. But the illusions refused to fade. My heartbreak brewed. If she was truly meeting Greg or anyone else, she certainly wouldn't confess. Each day, I grew more on edge, scouring her phone logs in my mind, wanting to see if she was messaging him at 12:57. But I never stooped to checking her phone forcibly, yet. Instead, illusions gnawed at me from within. One day, I took a half day at my job, feigning a medical appointment. At around 12:30 p.m., I drove to her hospital, determined to see for myself what happened around 1 p.m. I parked near the staff entrance, found a vantage point behind a row of shrubs. Yes, it was borderline stalking, but illusions can drive you to extremes. My heart hammered as I watched employees come and go. At 12:55, Lucy emerged from a side door, phone in hand, texting furiously. At 12:57, she pocketed her phone. Right on schedule. Then she lingered by the curb, scanning the lot. My breath caught. She looked anxious? Or maybe expectant. Moments later, a man walked out, brown hair, wearing scrubs, definitely younger. Greg, presumably. They exchanged a brief smile, said a few words. Then they parted. He got in his car, Lucy watched him drive off, then headed back inside. The entire encounter lasted less than a minute. My illusions scrambled. That was it? A quick word, a glance? It hardly seemed like some torrid affair. But also, she waited specifically until he left. She'd effectively cut off texting me at the same time he ended his shift, only to watch him walk away. The heartbreak I felt was tinged with confusion. She didn't go anywhere with him. So what was the reason for this daily ritual? Maybe they had some inside joke, or a routine of him returning borrowed items, or maybe she just wanted to see him off. That still didn't explain the hush about it. That evening, I confronted her again, my voice shaking. Lucy, I was near your hospital today, so you step outside at 12:57. You waited for Greg to come out. Then you watched him drive off. Why do you do that every day? Why not tell me? She paled, tears pricking her eyes. You followed me? That's an invasion of my privacy, she murmured, her voice laced with hurt. I know, I said, heartbreak surging. But I was worried. Something is off, Lucy. Why won't you just explain? Her eyes welled. It's complicated. She sank onto the couch, trembling. Greg, he's dealing with some personal stuff, depression or something. I check on him to see if he's okay, because he's had dark thoughts. I walk him out to his car sometimes, just to be sure he gets there safe. That's it. She sniffled, tears threatening. I didn't mention it because I promised him confidentiality. He's embarrassed about his mental health. And I didn't want you to worry or suspect anything. My heartbreak flared anew. So it wasn't an affair? Or was that just another story? Illusions can stack. Why not at least tell me a coworker needed emotional support? I asked, exasperated. It'd be better than me suspecting everything. She rubbed her eyes. I was trying to respect his privacy. His suicidal, or was. I didn't want to break his trust. We formed a routine. He ends shift at 1 o'clock, I watch him leave, make sure he's stable, then I go back. That's why I stopped texting you. Because I can't risk missing him if he tries to slip away or do something drastic. I stared at her, heartbreak mingling with guilt. That's serious. But illusions can be worse than the truth, Lucy. I was about to imagine the worst. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm sorry, truly. I see how my secrecy led you to illusions. I was just torn, Greg begged me not to mention it. I got in too deep, not wanting to betray his confidence. She paused, sniffing. But I see how it hurt you. If you want, I'll come clean about it now. The situation is delicate, but you deserve to know enough that you're not left imagining an affair. My anger ebbed, replaced by sorrow. I get it, mental health is private. But you put me in the dark, let me torment myself. That's not fair. She nodded, voice trembling. I know. If I told you something, anything, like I have a co-worker going through a crisis, I meet him daily at 1 to check on him, maybe you'd have understood. But I was scared, plus I gave Greg my word. We embraced, tears shared, illusions dissolving into relief that it wasn't the betrayal I'd feared. But heartbreak lingered, as trust had been tested. She assured me that it was purely a supportive gesture, that once Greg's shift ended, she'd accompany him outside, check if he was stable, then watch him leave. She'd cut off texting me so she could focus on him completely, ensuring he felt heard. The daily pattern explained the abrupt end to our lunch break banter. Over the next days, I processed it all. Illusions can be cunning, fueling heartbreak from half-truths. Now that I had the real reason, part of me felt empathy, another part felt pangs of jealousy. Why did she trust me so little? Why was she devoting all this emotional energy to a co-worker, not telling me? We had more deep conversations about boundaries, about how she can't just unilaterally keep me in the dark to protect a co-worker's mental health. She apologized repeatedly, offering to let me meet Greg or see texts to confirm the nature of their relationship. I refused to read the messages. He deserved privacy if it was truly about mental health, but I did accept that I needed reassurance. She promised she'd keep me in the loop if anything more complicated arose. We tried to move forward, but illusions can leave scars. Each lunchtime, I'd still sense her phone going quiet. Even though I knew the reason, I sometimes felt a twinge of old heartbreak. She'd text me at 12:55, heading out with Greg, back soon, love you. That small text was our new compromise. Then she'd vanish until 1:15 or so, returning with a quick, all good, he's okay today. I came to accept it. One evening, maybe a week later, I came home to find Lucy on the couch, face pale. She looked up, tears in her eyes. Greg tried to overdose, she said in a shaky voice. He's in the hospital now, in psych hold. I'm so scared for him, for what it means. My heartbreak flared with sympathy, for her, for Greg. She poured out how she felt guilty, worried she hadn't done enough. Illusions about an affair seemed so trivial now, overshadowed by real crisis. I comforted her, holding her while she sobbed. The illusions parted, revealing a deeper synergy. We faced something real, supporting each other in a real tragedy. In the days that followed, Lucy visited Greg in the psych unit, still with my knowledge. She no longer hid anything. If illusions had once overshadowed us, the raw truth of mental health struggles overshadowed illusions. She told me each day how he was doing, that he was on medication, possibly returning to outpatient therapy soon. The heartbreak of illusions receded into the heartbreak of witnessing someone's battle with depression. Eventually, Greg stabilized, took a leave from work. Lucy's lunch break routine changed. She no longer dashed out at 12:57, no reason now that Greg's shift ended. It felt odd, a somber relief. She'd text me through her entire lunch, or sometimes call. But the illusions had done their damage. We needed to mend trust, reevaluate how we handle secrets. She recognized that even if it was about respecting Greg's privacy, she had to find a way to keep me from the agony of illusions. Meanwhile, I learned that jumping to an affair can blind me to other possibilities, that illusions can distort reality, cause heartbreak far beyond actual betrayal. We also explored how Lucy's emotional labor for Greg had weighed on her. She'd carried his burdens alone, thinking I might not understand or might push her to break confidence. That fueled illusions on my end. Through tears, we resolved to handle future crises more openly, ensuring no illusions form a wedge between us. The heartbreak had taught us a lesson. Illusions are birthed by partial truths, so we must share enough reality to keep them at bay. As time went on, we resumed a sense of normalcy. Lucy's lunches were no longer overshadowed by a fixed schedule. We found renewed appreciation for each other. The heartbreak of illusions had ironically drawn us closer, forging a deeper understanding of how secrets and half-truths can tear love apart. Over quiet dinners, Lucy would talk about the ways she wanted to support mental health at her hospital, maybe start a staff support group. I championed her cause, grateful we'd grown from the fiasco of illusions to a place of sincerity. One day, Lucy shared with me a moment that hammered home how illusions nearly destroyed us. She said, "Greg told me he was always grateful I showed up after his shift, that it gave him hope each day. But he also said he felt guilty for causing me stress. He asked if it caused problems at home. Lucy paused, tears in her eyes. I told him it did, in a way, because I wasn't honest with you about it. He apologized, said I should have looped you in from the start. She gave a shaky laugh. Even he knows illusions can be lethal, in all senses. We parted ways with illusions, forging a deeper vow. Lucy assured me that if she needs to give emotional support to a friend or co-worker again, she'll at least keep me in broad awareness, no more half-lies about lunch breaks or events. I promised I'd approach such revelations with understanding rather than suspicion. We recognized how illusions feed on our unspoken fears. Lucy's fear of betraying a friend's trust, my fear of losing her affection to someone else. Communication, we discovered, is the only way to starve illusions. Months passed, and Greg eventually returned to work, in a better headspace. Lucy told me he was grateful for everything. She no longer had to walk him out, he felt stable, had professional help. I saw him once at a hospital function Lucy invited me to, shook his hand, noticing the humility in his eyes. He had no clue about the illusions that once swelled in my mind, or that heartbreak I endured believing Lucy might be having an affair. He was simply a man relieved to be alive, thankful for Lucy's compassion. I felt a wave of empathy wash over me. Illusions had overshadowed the real story, but now, the real story was a testament to Lucy's caring heart. We parted that conversation feeling a certain closure. Reflecting on it all, I see how heartbreak from illusions can be just as devastating as heartbreak from an actual betrayal. My mind conjured nightmares of Lucy and Greg running off, all because of suspicious timing and withheld truths. Meanwhile, the real heartbreak was a man on the verge of suicide, a friend going to extremes to help him, and a husband left in the dark. Illusions thrive in secrecy, heartbreak thrives on illusions. But love, if nurtured by honesty, can outlast them both. We never told anyone else the full story. My illusions, her secrets, the meltdown at 12:57 p.m. each day. But we carry the lessons. Illusions come quickly when partial truths sow doubt, heartbreak flares if we fail to communicate. We overcame it through vulnerability, eventually letting the real reason overshadow the illusions. I think about how an extra minute of conversation might have spared me weeks of dread. If Lucy had told me Greg's shift ends at 1 o'clock, he's depressed, I check on him daily, I'd have been anxious, but not suspicious of an affair. She'd have kept her friend's mental health private without letting illusions devour our bond. Yet we can't rewrite the past. We can only walk forward, mindful never to let illusions creep in again. Sometimes Lucy apologizes spontaneously, tears in her voice. I'm sorry I made you think I was stepping out on you. That must have felt awful. I hold her, telling her we've grown from that heartbreak, that illusions no longer hold power. We reassure each other of our love, acknowledging how illusions nearly overshadowed it. The weirdness with my cologne or new perfume never factored in this scenario, but illusions can exist in any manner. For me, it was the abrupt end to lunch texts. For others, it might be a new credit card charge. The principle remains, illusions flourish in the silent gap between suspicious evidence and real explanation. Now, Lucy and I face new stresses, my workload, her potential job promotion, but we do so with candor. If she has to help a co-worker through a crisis, I hear about it. If I sense a weird vibe, I ask openly. That's the system we devised to keep illusions at bay. She jokes that 12:57 p.m. is no longer cursed, that now if her lunch texts stop, it's truly because she's juggling a phone call or finishing her meal. We find it comedic to recall how meticulously I tracked those minutes. In a way, that comedic angle helps us move on from the heartbreak illusions inflicted. I share all this to underscore how illusions can spark heartbreak out of nothing. They're potent precisely because we love deeply. The fear of losing that love amplifies every suspicious sign. But illusions can be dismantled by a single earnest conversation, one Lucy eventually gave me about Greg's mental health struggles. So while illusions once haunted me, they now serve as a cautionary memory. Always talk, always ask, always risk honesty over polite secrecy. Because illusions can tear hearts apart, sometimes for no actual wrongdoing. I won't pretend we emerged unscathed. For a while, I second-guessed Lucy's every mention of a co-worker or friend. She recognized that, never accusing me of paranoia, but rather patiently reaffirmed her transparency. On my part, I overcame the habit of checking the clock at 12:57 p.m. daily, reminding myself that she no longer had to vanish. We learned illusions can be unstoppable unless we decide to push them aside with the truth. One final note, illusions might not always be false. Sometimes a partner truly is unfaithful. But in my case, Heartbreak from illusions overshadowed a heartbreak that was real but different. Someone else's heartbreak, Greg's despair. Lucy was just compassion incarnate, bridging the gap for him. The heartbreak for me was being excluded from her motives, left to swirl in suspicion. At least we discovered the real heartbreak behind it was about saving a life, not betraying me. That perspective tempered my anger, letting me channel relief and empathy. So this is how illusions ended, how heartbreak found a resolution. Lucy and I stand together, forging a new vow. No matter how complicated or private a scenario is, we keep each other in the loop enough to avoid illusions. She can say, I have a co-worker in crisis, can't give details, but I need to help him daily, and I can accept that. Or if I sense tension, I can ask, and she'll answer honestly. Illusions belong to the time we almost lost each other in silence. Looking back, I remain amazed at how a simple daily cutoff in text messages at 12:57 p.m. nearly convinced me Lucy was having an affair. Illusions fed on tiny details. A co-worker with a matching schedule shift, her hush about their interactions, the sudden hush in our conversation. The heartbreak was real, yet we overcame it by confronting illusions head-on, unveiling the raw reasons behind them. I no longer tremble at the memory, nor does Lucy flinch at mention of that co-worker's name. Greg eventually recovered, expressed deep gratitude. Lucy said he apologized if he'd inadvertently caused friction, but it was never about him, it was about illusions I nurtured because Lucy withheld truths. We parted ways with illusions, forging a stronger bond built on clarity. Now, we remain watchful for illusions. They can form any time a secret is kept under the guise of protecting someone. The heartbreak taught us that illusions rarely protect, they corrode from within. If Lucy has to maintain a co-worker's privacy, she can at least say, I'm supporting someone in crisis, it's personal, but I promise it's not an affair. That bit of clarity would have saved us so much sorrow. Today, we share a new warmth, a better synergy at home. She still works at the hospital, but her lunches are more flexible, sometimes FaceTiming me if she's free. I see in her eyes a spark of relief that illusions no longer weigh her down. The heartbreak from illusions is replaced by a subtle confidence that we can handle each other's truths. She no longer regrets telling me or not telling me about something trivial, because we decided nothing is trivial if it can cause illusions to flourish. In the quiet of our evenings, if I think back to those days, I recall the fear that maybe she was slipping away. The illusions were so vivid, I nearly believed them over the love we'd built for years. That's the danger illusions pose, they feed on the mind's darkest corners. But heartbreak gave me courage to demand an explanation, and heartbreak gave her courage to confess. Without heartbreak, we might never have faced the truth. Though illusions can cast a long shadow, we found that heartbreak, ironically, can break illusions if we let it push us to confront reality. Lucy confronted me with her real reason, supporting a deeply troubled co-worker, fearing I'd not understand, but ultimately trusting me enough to share. And once illusions dissolved, heartbreak turned into empathy, forging a path for us to stand side by side, even if the journey was painful. I often wonder how many couples endure illusions that spawn heartbreak, never discovering the real story. Perhaps some illusions are more benign, or some are actual truths of betrayal. But in every case, illusions and heartbreak form a toxic cycle. Our story proves illusions can be undone by a single conversation, no matter how complicated the truth. We overcame heartbreak by clinging to love and honesty. If you were to peek into our life now, you'd see Lucy still texting me around lunch, or calling spontaneously to say hi. If she's busy with hospital admin tasks, she'll let me know in advance. No more abrupt vanishings at 12:57. If Greg or another co-worker needs emotional support, she'll mention it in broad strokes, ensuring I don't feel shut out. The illusions of the past taught us a lasting lesson about the cost of secrecy. Sometimes, I wonder if illusions are a natural byproduct of love. We fear losing each other, so we interpret half hints as big betrayals. Lucy and I realize we can't fully banish illusions from the human experience, but we can keep them from taking root by fostering open channels. The heartbreak we experienced is our reminder to never let illusions fester. All told, her lunch break texts always stopped at the same time, when someone else's shift ended, and illusions blossomed. For a while, heartbreak overwhelmed me, suspecting an affair. But illusions were overshadowed by the real heartbreak of a co-worker's mental health crisis, and the real heartbreak that Lucy believed she had to hide it from me. We survived, forging a stronger, raw bond. That's the quiet miracle in a sea of illusions. Once you push them aside, you might find the truth is something you can face together, heartbreak included. Yes, illusions nearly cost us our closeness. But ironically, heartbreak forced us to speak plainly. That's how illusions ended, how heartbreak found resolution. We learned that sometimes the darkest illusions can be undone by compassion and clarity. We still remember the quiet fear that gnawed at me each afternoon, the 12:57 hush, the unstoppable swell of suspicion, the heartbreak that made me want to scream. Today, we replace that hush with conversation. We replace illusions with trust. And that is how we overcame illusions that almost severed our bond, through heartbreak, confession, and the unwavering belief that love can handle truth far better than it can handle secrets.